Ladies, I want to challenge the popular idea you've been told time and time again, that the only way to get through a breakup or to make a man regret losing you is no contact. Now, don't get me wrong, distance does have power. But here's the truth no one is telling you. No contact alone won't break him, because silence can be mistaken for indifference. If he thinks you've simply moved on, he'll adapt faster than you think. The real way to get into his mind, the way to truly shift the dynamic, isn't by disappearing. It's by showing him, unapologetically, that you've outgrown the version of yourself he took for granted. When you stay stuck in the shadows, hoping your absence will speak for itself, you give him the gift of mystery without the sting of loss. But when you start showing up differently, more radiant, more fulfilled, more magnetic than ever before, that's when his world begins to unravel. Because men don't feel regret in silence, they feel regret when they see what they've lost. Your presence, not your absence, becomes the trigger that reminds him of everything he failed to cherish. It's not about chasing him, it's not about proving yourself to him, and it's not about begging for validation. It's about showing the world, including him, that you are operating at a level he no longer qualifies for. That energy, that transformation, that unapologetic glow, it cuts deeper than silence ever could. Because when he sees you thriving, not bitter, not broken, but beautifully unbothered, that's when his "I'll be fine without her" narrative collapses. No contact makes him curious, yes, but visible growth makes him regretful. A man can justify your silence, but he can't ignore your evolution. And here's the secret: you're not even doing it for him. You're doing it for you. You're rewriting the story, stepping into your higher self, and living a life that naturally communicates, "I was never waiting for you to come back. I was busy becoming someone you'd never deserve again." So forget relying on silence alone. If you really want to break him faster, let your actions, your energy, and your unstoppable growth be the loudest message you'll ever send. That's not revenge, that's self-respect. And trust me, nothing haunts a man more than watching the woman he thought he knew become the woman he can never have again. When people hear the phrase "no contact," they often imagine it as the golden key to making someone miss them or regret losing them. They believe silence is powerful, that by cutting someone off completely, the absence itself will do all the work. But silence on its own is overrated, because while it may create curiosity, it rarely creates deep regret. A man can rationalize your silence in many ways. He may assume you're healing, he may convince himself you've already moved on, or worse, he may decide you simply don't care anymore. And when he tells himself that story, your silence becomes freedom for him, not pressure. He feels released from responsibility, and instead of missing you, he adapts to life without you faster than you think. Silence only carries weight if it is backed by presence elsewhere. Without that, no contact is like trying to win a game by refusing to play. You're not creating impact, you're only creating distance, and distance, when misunderstood, can work against you. Men don't always interpret absence as loss. Many times, they take it as confirmation that they were right to leave, or they use it as motivation to detach completely. The silence that you thought would break him becomes the silence that sets him free. The problem is that no contact places all your power in what he might think or feel. It assumes that he is sitting there, analyzing your absence, when in reality, most people quickly adjust to new circumstances. He fills the silence with his own story, and that story doesn't necessarily involve regret. Sometimes it even strengthens his ego. He might tell himself, "She couldn't handle being around me, so she had to disappear." That narrative feeds his confidence rather than shakes it. Instead of relying on silence as the ultimate weapon, the true shift comes when you stop caring whether or not he hears from you. It's not the absence of your messages that matters, it's the presence of your growth, your transformation, and your unshakable energy. When you cling to no contact as the solution, you're still operating from a place of reaction. You're still waiting for his attention, still calculating how he might respond. That keeps you tethered to his opinion of you even when you're not speaking. Breaking free means realizing that silence isn't strategy, it's simply space, and space is useful only if you fill it with the right energy. If all you do is disappear, you become a ghost in his mind. Easy to dismiss, easy to replace. But when you show that your life didn't just continue without him, it flourished, your absence becomes presence in the most haunting way possible. He doesn't just wonder where you went. He sees who you've become, and that's when regret begins. So yes, silence can spark curiosity, but curiosity fades. Regret requires impact, and impact is never created by silence alone. It's created by the undeniable evidence that you've outgrown the version of yourself he once knew, and that he no longer has access to the woman you've become. A man doesn't feel the full weight of losing you just because you stop talking to him. Regret is born when he is forced to see what he no longer has access to. That's why visibility is so important. People often think that pulling away completely will automatically make someone wonder, but wondering is not the same as regretting. Curiosity is shallow. It makes him ask questions like, what is she doing? Or has she moved on? But regret is deeper. Regret comes when he is confronted with the reality of your life moving forward in ways that highlight everything he took for granted. When you become visible in your growth, your energy, and the way you show up in the world, it hits him differently. He doesn't just wonder where you went, he sees exactly what he lost. He sees the smile that no longer includes him, the confidence that doesn't look for his validation, the joy that radiates without his presence. That image cuts deeper than silence ever could. Silence lets him imagine his own version of your story, and sometimes that story flatters his ego. Visibility forces him to face the truth, and truth is what shatters his comfort. Men often believe that they can walk away without consequences. They tell themselves that you'll struggle without them, that you'll crumble, or that you'll wait around hoping they return. But when your life visibly reflects the opposite, it destabilizes the narrative he built to protect himself. Imagine him scrolling through social media or hearing from mutual friends about your new achievements, your glowing presence, or the peace you carry. He doesn't get to dismiss you as the woman who faded after the breakup. He has to acknowledge that you became stronger, brighter, and harder to reach. That acknowledgement plants the seed of regret. The reason visibility matters is because humans learn through contrast. He has to compare the reality of who you are now with the version of you he thought he knew, and that comparison stings because regret is not about the moment of leaving, it's about realizing later what should never have been lost. He can't make that realization if he has nothing to measure against. Silence gives him space to forget. Visibility forces him to remember. This doesn't mean showing off or trying to orchestrate some fake image just to get under his skin. It's about genuinely living in alignment with yourself and letting that authenticity be seen. When you elevate your lifestyle, your mindset, your energy, and the way you treat yourself, the people around you can't help but notice. And so does he. That's when his mind begins to wrestle with the thought, she's becoming everything I always wanted, but now she's no longer mine. In the end, regret thrives on what is undeniable, and what is undeniable is not your silence, it's the evidence of your evolution. That's why visibility matters more than disappearing. A man may ignore your absence, but he cannot ignore the proof that you've grown into someone who exists beyond his reach. Growth is the one thing that shifts the entire dynamic after a breakup. Silence can be dismissed, absence can be rationalized, but undeniable evolution is impossible to ignore. When you rise into a new version of yourself, confident, fulfilled, and radiant, you create a mirror that forces him to see what he lost. That growth becomes the trigger that stirs his regret far more powerfully than any message you could send or any game you could play. Think about it. If he can still picture you exactly as you were when he left, then in his mind nothing has changed. That means he can keep telling himself the same comforting story. that leaving you was the right decision, that you would always be the same woman, waiting, stagnant, or hoping for his return. But when he sees growth, his narrative collapses. Growth tells him he underestimated you. Growth tells him you weren't waiting for him at all. Growth tells him you became someone he no longer qualifies for, and that realization can sting more than silence ever could. Men often walk away believing they still have time. They assume you'll stay in the same place emotionally, that they can circle back if they choose. But when your growth is visible, that illusion shatters. He no longer sees a woman frozen in the past. He sees someone who leveled up in ways he didn't expect, someone who may not even look back if he tried to return. That contrast between who you were and who you've become creates the sharp edge of regret. The beauty of growth is that it doesn't have to be loud or performative. It's not about proving anything to him. It's about stepping into alignment with who you truly are and allowing that natural transformation to speak for itself. Maybe it's the way you carry yourself differently, with a confidence that doesn't need validation. Maybe it's how your life expands, new opportunities, deeper friendships, a healthier routine. Maybe it's simply the joy on your face that shows you didn't just survive without him, you thrived. All of that speaks volumes without a single word directed at him. Growth also creates a sense of distance that no silence ever could. Silence only withholds communication. Growth builds a gap between your new reality and his old perception of you. That gap makes him realize that the woman he once knew no longer exists in the same way, and that truth can be jarring. He doesn't just lose contact with you, he loses access to a version of you he thought he could always count on. And nothing triggers regret faster than realizing you've evolved beyond his reach. At its core, growth is the most powerful form of closure you can give yourself. It removes the need for revenge, the need to wait, or the need to play games. It naturally communicates that you are not stuck in the past, and while you didn't grow for him, the side effect is that he is forced to confront the fact that he lost someone who refused to stay the same. In that moment, his regret doesn't come from your silence. It comes from watching you become the woman he can never have again. After a breakup, the instinct many people have is to chase, to call, to text, to explain, to fight for understanding, to beg for another chance. That chase comes from a place of fear, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of not being enough, the fear that if you don't keep yourself in his line of sight, you'll lose him forever. But here's the truth. Chasing never creates attraction, it never creates respect, and it certainly never creates regret. What does create all of those things is elevation, choosing to rise so high that you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone, least of all someone who undervalued it in the first place. When you chase, you confirm his belief that he is the prize. You hand over your power by showing that your happiness depends on whether or not he chooses you. That energy makes him comfortable, even arrogant, because it tells him he can walk away and you'll still be there, waiting, ready to accept breadcrumbs. But when you stop chasing and start elevating, the entire dynamic shifts. You reclaim your power because you show, not through words, but through the way you live, that you are the prize. That is what shakes him, because it's no longer about him deciding your value. It's about you living in it unapologetically. Elevation doesn't mean trying to show him up or plotting ways to make him jealous. True elevation is rooted in authenticity. It's in becoming so centered, so fulfilled, and so radiant in your own life that his presence or absence no longer defines you. It might be pursuing passions you once put aside, deepening friendships, nurturing your health, or finally stepping into opportunities you used to doubt yourself about. Every step you take in the direction of growth communicates, without you saying a word, that you've outgrown what he offered. And here's where the power lies. When you elevate, you're not trying to punish him. You're not even focused on him at all. You're simply stepping into the next version of yourself, and ironically, that's what unsettles him most. Because nothing gets under someone's skin like realizing the person they once took for granted is thriving without them. Chasing says, I need you to validate me. Elevating says, I was always more than what you saw, and now I'm living it. That message cuts deeper than any text, any argument, or any plea ever could. When a man sees you elevating, he feels the contrast between his assumptions and your reality. He thought you'd be waiting, yet here you are, moving. He thought you'd be broken, yet here you are, glowing. He thought he had time, but now he realizes time is running out because the woman he knew is becoming someone new. That shift is where regret lies, because regret is born not in your need for him, but in your independence from him. So instead of chasing, choose to elevate. Instead of proving yourself, embody yourself. Instead of begging for his attention, give your energy to becoming the best, fullest version of you. That's not only how you break the cycle, it's how you break him in the process, because nothing haunts a man more than seeing the woman who once wanted him become the woman he'll never deserve again. Self-respect is the quiet force that speaks louder than any words, louder than silence, and louder than any attempt to prove your worth. After a breakup, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking you need to show him what he lost by overcompensating, by trying to flaunt your progress in his direction, or by orchestrating ways for him to notice you. But the most powerful message you can ever send is not a performance, it's a standard. When you operate from self-respect, everything about your life communicates, I am no longer available to be treated the way you treated me. That is the language he understands more than anything else. Self-respect is not about anger or revenge, it's about boundaries. It's about refusing to chase someone who undervalued you, refusing to accept crumbs when you deserve a feast, and refusing to shrink yourself just to fit into a place you've already outgrown. Men notice when a woman carries herself with that kind of dignity. They might not admit it out loud, but it unsettles them, because it shows that you have stepped outside of their control. When he realizes he no longer has access to you in the ways he once did, his ego takes the hit that silence alone could never deliver. Living beautifully unbothered is the truest expression of self-respect. It doesn't mean you don't care or that you never felt hurt. It means you refuse to let that hurt define the direction of your life. It means you're not consumed by the need to prove anything to him. You're not posting pictures for his attention. You're not crafting stories in hopes he'll watch them. And you're not checking to see if he notices your glow up. You're simply glowing because you've chosen to live a life that feels good to you, not one designed to get a reaction. And ironically, that's exactly what gets the deepest reaction. Because here's the secret. Nothing is more haunting than a woman who doesn't need to be seen to feel valuable. He may have expected you to spiral, to beg, to hold on, or to be bitter. But when your response is peace, when your focus is joy, when your energy is light, you rob him of the narrative that kept his ego safe. He can't tell himself you're stuck because your life reflects freedom. He can't tell himself you're waiting because your actions show you've moved forward. He can't tell himself you're still his because your self-respect draws a line that makes it clear you are no longer available in that way. This is why self-respect is the ultimate message. It requires no strategy, no manipulation, no performance. It's magnetic in its simplicity, and it transforms you from someone who was left behind into someone untouchable. And the irony is, the more untouchable you become, the more he feels the weight of his mistake. He doesn't just miss your presence. He realizes he lost access to a woman who refuses to lose herself. That's the kind of realization that doesn't fade, because it's not rooted in silence or absence. It's rooted in the unshakable truth of who you are. And so, if there is one truth I want you to carry with you, it's this. Silence may create distance, but it is your growth, your visibility, your elevation, and your unwavering self-respect that create the kind of impact no one can escape. You don't need to play games, you don't need to beg, and you certainly don't need to chase. All you need is to rise into the best version of yourself, because nothing will ever break him faster than realizing he lost the woman who refused to lose herself. Thank you for listening, thank you for your time, and most of all, thank you for choosing to honor your own worth.